Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's CJ. This is CJ Reads. We're doing a wrap up, baby. It's a February wrap up. Okay, let's just do it. The first book I read in February was Eileen by Ottessa Moshfegh. I hadn't read this Moshfegh yet. Of course, I was eager to. I loved My Year of Rest and Relaxation, and it came highly recommended from Jalen at Bar in the Bookcase. This was a great introspective character-focused novel about a young woman named Eileen who is living in a small-ish town with her verbally abusive father who is an active alcoholic, and she is longing to get out of the rut of her day-to-day life. She is over it, she's bored, she's obsessed with envisioning a future that is different from her day-to-day life that she's currently experiencing. In typical Moshfegh fashion, she really digs into the dirty, secret, gross, shamey parts of being a human being and exposes them in a way that's really fun and delightful to read. Eileen is by no means a likable character. She's kind of pitiful. I think the reader is supposed to have like a pity relationship to her, which is kind of weird, but it worked. Essentially working in a young boy's prison system when she meets a central character who kind of accelerates the plot of the book. She's a gorgeous woman. Eileen is enraptured by her. She's envisioning her life as her friend. She wants to embody her. She's everything Eileen isn't. And the kind of narrative crux of the book happens where these two get involved with one another and things go awry. I really liked this book. I think it was a fun read. I would almost say that I didn't need any plot though. That was my one critique of it. The kind of plot and journey that forms later in the book when Eileen meets this teacher woman at the prison like wasn't even necessary to me. I could have just been with Eileen and her gross, sad mind for the entirety of the book. More plot-driven elements felt a little rushed to me towards the end. Next up, I read Summer Water by Sarah Moss. This was a really interesting, tiny little novel. It's set in a Scottish camping RV vacation spot, and we're kind of with 12 disparate characters who aren't connected in any way other than they're all vacationing at the same camping spot at the same time. Very insular, inquisitive, character-led book. All of the characters were pretty diverse from one another in both like age, sex, gender, race, etc. And I think it was a really interesting, reflective, moody little read. Definitely plotless for 99% of the book, and then kind of similar to Eileen, the last, I'm really talking about 20 so pages are here, like 1% of the book. All of the disparate characters come together for an event, we shall say. I really enjoyed my reading experience with this. It's definitely like moody, gray sky kind of vibe. I liked it. I like this author. Next, I read an arc, Filthy Animals by Brandon Taylor. I got access to this on NetGalley. Very excited to read it. I loved Real Life by Brandon Taylor, which I read last year, so I was really anticipating this collection of short stories, and it did not let me down. It was really good. A lot of the themes have overlay with real life. There's academia, being a young lusty person, insecurity, drama, grief. Brandon Taylor is just like a really good writer. Really strong writer. I don't really have anything more to say on Filthy Animals. I think some of the stories that were more similar to each other had more reoccurring characters. Like there's like a friend group in some of these, and then there's other stories that are included that we don't see the characters and show up again. So I felt like the ones that were more individualistic were stronger to me. Coming out in May, I think, so watch out. Then I read Infinite Country by Patricia Engel. A really gorgeous kind of family saga about a Colombian family who experience immigration trauma as they're trying to immigrate to the United States, and certain members of their family get deported back to Colombia, and kind of this intergenerational piece of fiction that really deals with some themes of like legacy, belonging, a lot of gorgeous tie-ins too about Andean mythology of the indigenous history that existed in the Colombian area and how that informs the way we view our roots and family itself. Really recommended this. This would go into like my good plot, good writing category. It basically means it's a book that has a plot and I liked it. Read Second Place by Rachel Cusk, my first Rachel Cusk. This was another arc and I read it on NetGalley. Big arc month for me. I'm actually mindful moving into March that I don't want it to be that way, but I have a few to get through. What can I say? I loved my Rachel Cusk reading experience. From what I know, this was a pretty weird or dissimilar book to what she usually writes. It's definitely like had a plot. It was a novel with a plot, and I hear she usually writes a lot of like plotless, meandering autofiction. Second Place was about a woman and her husband who build a tiny home on their plot of land and use it to invite artists in residency to make work at their cabin. Wife in this story invites a acclaimed artist to stay with her that she has a previous connection with. It's an artist that she's always admired and kind of looked up to, and we watch their affinity and kind of distaste of each other evolve as the book continues. It also was just full of like really sharp, gorgeous prose about motherhood, caretaking, kind of the act of looking. It felt very exploratory of kind of gender roles and patriarchy in general in a way that didn't feel super beating you over the head with any ideology. It was just like within the text and the fiction, within the text and the story itself. So it was really more powerful and kind of like a seamless reading experience. I love this book. I'm gonna read all of Rachel Cusk now. Okay, then I DNF'd 3 books in a row. It's not them, it's me. I don't know, it might be them and it might be me. I feel bad because again, these were all 3 proofs that were sent to me and I was really anticipating them based on, you know, the jacket copy, but none of them were doing it for me. So the first book I DNF'd was Clara and the Sun by Kazu Ishiguro, kindly sent to me, and couldn't get into it. This is my second Ishiguro book that I've DNF'd, which I think does not bode well for our future relationship with one another. I think this might have had potential, but like the pacing was just a little sleepy for me in the moment. I could go back to this in the future. I actually see a possibility if I ever want to get into like near future AI stuff, which I do get into the mood for, like a dystopian vibe, but in the moment I just had to put it down. The next DNF was The Atmospherians by Alex McElroy. Very much so on like a how is social media affecting us, I want to log off, internet bad boy, internet good boy kind of vibe lately. Yeah, that made sense. So I'm excited to read any literature dissecting the internet because I think it's 1, a really hard topic to do correctly, and then like 2, obviously something that we're all familiar with and experiencing in real time. This was about a social media star who got called out and canceled, and she makes friends with like this guy and they're like trying to form a camp to rehabilitate men because the men are misogynistic and like there's kind of like a disease of sexism spreading. I don't know, the writing was bad. I had to tap out. I really gave it an honest effort. I read like 100 pages of this and then I was like, can't do it. The DNF's Night Rooms by Gina Nutt. I was really looking forward to this. It was blurred by Chelsea Hodson, who wrote Tonight I'm Someone Else, a collection of essays I really liked. Unfortunately, the writing in this wasn't super strong to me. It was pulling a lot from like the language of cinema and movies to kind of explore trauma, depression, anxiety, sexuality, etc. But I thought the writing wasn't super strong to me. Like, it did something really annoying where instead of calling the movies it was referencing by name, it would be like the movie with the shark, or like the movie with the alien in the basket in the bicycle. I was like, just say E.T., just say Jaws. But it did that so much and so repetitively that it became insufferable for me to read and I had to put it down. I read Boy Parts by Eliza Clark. I finished this book. Finally finished it. So it was like exactly what I need coming out of that slump. It's definitely a romp of a book. I've seen some really interesting critiques and defenses of this book on the internet lately. My little group chat of bookish friends all kind of read it at a similar time-ish. Kieran especially read it like a few days before I did, and his summary of the plot is like American Psycho but make it feminist. And I completely agree. It was interesting. Like, we follow a young female visual artist who is making subversive, kind of like kinky, you know, taboo photographic art with male subjects who she meets on the street. And it's kind of like the unraveling of like her sanity as she gets closer, and like more destructive behavior towards her subject matter happens. And in general, just like kind of like messy inner landscape of a 20-something who has drug addiction problem, terrible friends, is like an egomaniac, and is honestly abusive. So it was fun to read. It was fun to read. It was a romp, as I say. I think it could have actually been strong and said something clearer if it had a strong editor. Like, there's some foundational ideas in there that were really interesting to me about like control and consent, but it was kind of executed in some lazy photography metaphors that didn't really do it for me. I read No One Is Talking About This by Patricia Lockwood. I loved Prestudy by Patricia Lockwood, so I was excited to read this. And I had a really weird reading experience with it, actually. I read about the first 75 pages and I was texting my bookish group chat again, and I was like, I'm gonna DNF this, I can't do this, like I don't understand what's happening. And I think this is a book that is better consumed in like one sitting than dipping in and out of it. It's divided into two parts. The first part really does read kind of like this manic, endless Twitter scroll that if you pick it up and you go in and out of it, it is kind of hard to like get in a zone and tap into. So I guess take that with a grain of salt. Like, that's my one recommendation of reading this book, is like try to read it all in one day, or, you know, a consolidated period of time. But we're following an unnamed narrator who is kind of obsessed with the internet, acclaimed fame on the internet, and is dealing with like these more metaphysical, philosophical ideas of like how the internet is informing her actual brain. Definitely like interesting like hive mind ideas of like, is this my original thought anymore, or did I just see this somewhere online? And I liked it. It was like a fun kind of endless doom scroll of internet culture at large. And then the second part of the book is much more personal. It's still in this fragmented style, but it kind of flips the content on its head and is definitely about like a more interpersonal, familial trauma that our narrator's family is going through. Essentially, her sister gives birth to a child who has a bad prognosis for staying alive. So this kind of right sizes everything in our narrator's mind, and in really beautiful prose kind of examines how everything is useless and stupid, and also everything matters and is beautiful at the same time. Very much so like a tension of this era we're living in, shall we say. I definitely fluctuate between those 2 points all the time. I'm like, nothing matters, my individual contribution to the world is garbage, why does it matter if I throw a piece of plastic away? And then like hyper responsibility on the other side of that, where you realize that like, of course it all matters, because everything matters, because this is a collective experience. The world should be, we need to like be more communal. So I really like this book. It was really weird and singular and not like anything I'd read before, and also really funny, which was good. And that's it. That's my February wrap up. Okay. Love you, bye.